and thank you for joining us on Global Columbus. My name is Guadalupe Velasquez, and today I have a co-host, Abdikhayr Soofe.
Thank you, Guadalupe. Thanks. Absolutely my pleasure being here with you tonight. We'll be talking about a Somali famine. Our guests want to introduce, we have three guests tonight. We'll start from the right. Tariq Terry of Somali Documentary Project. You're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Mahdi Warsama, the chair of Board of Directors of Masjid As-Salama, and Kaltouma Sheikh, a newly graduate student of a member of the Somali community in Central Ohio.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get started on talking about the famine and what is going on in the Horn of Africa, we would like to get to know a little bit more about our guests. Please share a little bit about yourselves.
My name is Kaltouma Sheikh. I'm a recent graduate of the Center of International Studies at the Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. I'm from Kenya. I came to the United States 2002, and I lived in Rochester, New York, before I moved to Columbus in September 2003. And I've been living here ever since then.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Mahdi Warsama. I came to the United States in July of 1987 as a young man. And I lived there up to September of 2004. That's when I moved to Columbus. And I established myself in Columbus. I graduated from Kent State University. And currently I am the chairman of the board of directors and the director of a mosque called Masjid As-Salama, located at Cleveland Avenue on 161. And I am pursuing more higher education, especially graduate school, maybe a law school, maybe other graduate schools. I'm applicant right now. I don't have so many admissions so far, but it looks good.
But you're going to stay in Columbus,
right? I'm going to stay in Columbus for a while.
All right.
Well, my name is Tariq Terry. I am the project manager for the Somali Documentary Project. Somali Documentary Project is a nonprofit project that uses art as an advocacy. Our job is to advocate on behalf of Somali people in the diaspora all around the world, particularly in Columbus. We're based in Columbus, and we also engage the community both in art, in both medium, whether it's photography or whether it's video. So happy to be here, happy to be a Columbus person.
And I know you recently shot a scene, a little video for WOSU I watched called Nasra's Journey. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Nasra's Journey, it was part of a project, a larger project on a national PBS program called Women, War and Peace. So our program focuses on the journey that one young Somali young lady who takes from the civil war torn in Somalia in the early 90s all the way through the current and present day. We examine the conditions which most refugees that are in Columbus faced, whether it's the urban refugee in Kenya, whether it's refugee camps, coming to the United States, the challenges they face, whether it's family issues, whether it's employment. So the documentary faces upheavals and problems that most refugees face, and it's check it out.
Indeed, upheavals indeed. We'll be talking about famine, and a lot of people sometimes we hear droughts and famine. Let's start with some definition. How do you define what's the difference between drought and famine?
Well, actually, drought is when rain doesn't come for quite some time. And famine it comes after that. It's a few months or years could take after the things or the crops die and animals and livestock die and humans have no choice and die from starvation. It's happening in Somalia, southern parts of Somalia currently, and it's been happening for quite some time. We've been talking about it for at least a couple of years, and we'll get into that more. It's a very, very severe situation in currently right now. It's happening in southern and Kenya and Ethiopia, some part of that too.
Would anyone else like to add?
I would say famine is more related to food scarcity. Like there is a scarcity of food, whether it's caused by a drought or sometimes it's a man-made. Because, for example, in 1992, there was a mass starvation in Bay and Bokol regions of Somalia. And it was not because there was a famine, there was a drought for a long time. It was because the militias were not allowing the people giving them any chance to farm, and they were looting the food reserves. So that's why you have a mass starvation, and it was a famine, but it was a man-made. So the other one is more related to the, as he mentioned, to the weather.
Most of the time I look at famine and drought as cause and consequence. The drought being the cause and the famine being the consequences of the drought. Around the world today, we have people are experiencing extreme weather and climate changes, and there are cases of extreme heat and low rainfall in most of the regions, especially Somalia and East African regions. But the drought can still be there, but people don't necessarily die because there might be some other options whereby the government comes in to intervene, provide some food aid and all that. But in the case of Somalia, the famine has mostly been caused by not reaching the people in need in time, or not delivering the needed aid in time to rescue these people. And most of the time, famine is always associated with mass death, malnutrition among kids. And most of the time, unfortunately, it's women and children that suffer the most. And the increased rate of malnutrition and all that. So in the case of Somalia, I can say that the situation has been made worse. The drought has been made worse and turned to famine because the region is already, devastated by conflicts and all that. So the delivery of food in some regions, especially the hardest hit, which is the southern part of Somalia, people that are in need of this aid haven't received aid in time. So that leading to death, especially among kids, or children and women.
We do have some slides that we'd like to show the viewing audience, and one will give a regional picture. If we could have that. There we go. So do you want to explain that, Abdi?
That is basically the southern part of Somalia, where mostly famine hit it hard, especially with the red area. We have a lot of children, especially children of under age of 5. The United Nations aid agencies reported 30,000 of them perished over the summer, and I don't have the current number, but the situation is getting worse by the day. And my colleagues, our host guests, Tariq and Mahdi, were involved with some fundraising activities within the City of Columbus Somali communities and other organizations to reach out. Would you tell us more of what has been contributed so far to this cause?
There were some, the community did its best, I believe. I would say it's not up to my expectation, of course, and it's not as organized as I should have expected. However, there were many donations were collected by different mosques, by different individuals, and by different organizations within the community. And one of the things that were collected were also clothes. And in fact, our mosque was one time used as a distribution or gathering site for those clothes, and later on they leased a location to collect their clothes, new clothes, used clothes, and it's my understanding that was shipped already, or it's under the process to be shipped. And there are also other organizations, international organizations, that came to Columbus and talked to the community about how to help. And there's also a task force established by the White House, U.S. government, to address the need and coordinate with the Somali communities in different localities. So many things has been done, but I think it's not it's not yet up to my expectation. We could do more, and we could organize it more.
Do you want to jump in, or?
First of all, I'm very proud that the Somalis in the diaspora have really played a role in trying to help our people back home in terms of raising awareness among the community and also trying to raise funds so that they can send it back home and also, send whatever help that they can in whichever way. So I'm not involved in any fundraising or anything, but I've read and I've heard about some of the activities that have been done across the community here in Columbus and in Canada, across in Europe and in Minnesota. But so far I'm very proud that the community is really committed in helping our own.
Yeah, I mean, the awareness is there. The awareness among the Somali community in Columbus, in Minneapolis, in major cities is there. The question is, the diaspora only cannot do anything. It's the responsibility of every human being to really help out. It cannot happen on our watches. A human being dying of starvation, it's something that is unacceptable, I think, for all of us.
Absolutely.
So it's not only a Somali responsibility, it's a human responsibility to really reach out and to look into these folks' eyes. It's not their fault. They didn't, it's not, they choose that life. So I think as your next guest and other things, you guys will display numbers, I'm assuming, and play. But ARC and many other organizations, locally, internationally, is doing the best they can, but it's not enough. Also, I want to point out also the stresses that it puts on the families here, because every Somali you see in Columbus, I'm sure he's got a family member out there. So it's not only touching, if it's not touching you, it's touching your neighbor. And I think it's better for most Americans today to really, I know things are not easy in America right now, but at least we're not starving, thank God. So,
right, and Abdi said, while we were looking at that map, 30,000 children have died just in the summer. Just while we were out here, doing our thing, during the summer, 30,000 children have perished. And we know that there are numbers something like 3,000 children a day are dying. And so that's why it was important for us to do this show, to talk about not only what can be done, but to also take a moment to reflect on this as well, to bring awareness to everyone. Because you're right, Tariq, it's everybody. It's our brothers and sisters. We're all human beings. We all occupy this earth. And so can we dig a little deeper into how it has gotten to be so bad? I mean, we've talked lightly about it, but what are the steps in how all of this has come to this disaster, to this devastation? So, first, because I understand there were some warning signs in the beginning that this could possibly happen. Could we dig a little deeper?
We have to understand the history and the background of this. Somalia is the only country for the last 20 years that did not have a functioning government. That means you did not have a Ministry of Agriculture that plans the food production and helps the peasant farmers. On top of that, you had conflict, civil war, in different times, in different levels. There was always some kind of conflict in southern Somalia for the last 20 years. Different groups trying to take over the southern regions of the country. Another group will come in and take over, and then back and forth. So these local communities, who normally are the most fertile regions of Somalia, and the only regions in Somalia that people are actually farmers and peasant farmers, did not have the resources and the peace and the stability to produce their own food for a long time. And then you have the chronic droughts that come on this region of Horn of Africa, maybe sometimes every other year, sometimes every 2 years, sometimes every 3 years. And then on top of that, you have the flooding of the two rivers, Shabelle and Chuba, which destroy the crops of the surrounding communities. And then you have lately Al-Shabaab, the Islamic, the militia that controls most of these regions. And one of the things that they did was they kick out the aid organizations, especially the WFP. And that also contributed to because many people from those regions used to depend on the aid from the NGOs and the aid organizations. So all those things combined, plus the latest famine, made the situation worse. And that's when people gave up and they started crossing the border to Kenya. They couldn't take it anymore.
I just would like to remind our viewing guests that this is a live show, and we welcome you to call in and ask questions and be a part of this conversation. And the number is 614-645-6557.
Now, Mahdi, you mentioned about the current situation. What I was wondering, the security issues, especially with the militias you mentioned. I understand some of the regions that we shown earlier, and we have still the map. We can show it again. How the aid and the fundraising activities were you able to access those regions and deliver the food, and were the aid agencies able to get in and reach the help?
Yes and no. The areas that's controlled by the government is mainly Mogadishu. The capital is accessible as far as I know. The other regions that may have a less famine issues but controlled by other militias allied with the government, TFG, are also accessible. For example, the Gada region, where nowadays it's controlled by militias allied with the government, and maybe Galgaduud region. Those are accessible, but the areas controlled by Al-Shabaab are conditionally accessible, which means if you come from certain countries and certain organizations, they will not let you in. But they might let some Muslim organizations go there and distribute food. But they are not letting, for example, WFP. Most of the well-known aid organizations will not be able to go there. But some Muslim governments have some access, and some Muslim organizations might have some access with so many conditions and so many strings attached.
And now the map didn't give us any number of states. How many regions are we talking about?
We're talking about 8 altogether. Gedo, Lower Chuba, Lower Shabelle, Middle Shabelle, Bayan Bakal, and then to some extent Hiran and Galgaduud, but less problematic.
I think we have some.
And Mogadishu, the Branded region, which is the very big region in terms of population. Yeah.
Yes, and I believe we have some more slides to show as well as we're discussing this.
Yes,
conversation. And there's another slide right there, Abdi.
Yep. That is some of the regions Mr. Warsama was talking about, especially the place where that's been highlighted. It shows the problem affected the whole region, the Horn of Africa, including the Eritrea, part of Ethiopia, even Kenya. But the worst situation that the famine is declared is that area that were highlighted: Gedo, Galgaduud, Shabelle, and the southern Somalia. And those are unfortunately the states where the aid agencies were not able to access because of the security situation. So that is the reason why a lot of people are fleeing and crossing the border to Kenya and Ethiopia. And we have a situation where, and we'll talk about that in the next segment, more about the refugees and the route of the refugees. Tariq was, matter of fact, in the Dadaab refugee camp a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, as I told you, the Somali Documentary Project follows the diaspora and the diaspora's problems in globally. So in 2005, we started addressing these issues, and this is way before. So we went to the Dadaab refugee camp in 2005 and filmed and talked about, other problems, whether health and malnutrition and so forth and so on. Again, 2008, end of 2008, December 2008, we went back and again came back with footage and filming and so forth and so on to talk about things are going to happen and we need to address those things. Unfortunately, as Mr. Warsame talked about, it is not only it's man-made, including weather and so forth. So it's a combination of it's called a perfect storm. Those things have happened. So people are fundraising, people are talking about it. It still is not enough, as I said earlier. So,
can you talk a little bit more about ARC? It was mentioned, but maybe even what the work that they're doing.
Well, your next guest is actually more familiar with them than I am, but ARC is doing a tremendous, an amazing job, and they're doing locally here. So what they're doing is talking to the people who knows the pulse of the drought. Unfortunately, Africa's problems always, it's a non-African issue. The people that make the decisions are not Africans. ARC is trying to, it's an African-made, it's a people among the community. They reaching out to the Somalis, who actually their voices matter, but also they're reaching to the non-Somalis through even the young generation through Facebook and all this cool media. So they're doing an amazing and tremendous job. Not only them, but other organizations, other people. And Mr. Warsame threw an acronym earlier, WFP. It's a World Food Program for those who are not familiar. It's a branch of United Nations. So a lot of organizations are doing it. Still, I'm going to keep saying it, it's not enough. Mm-hmm. So let's hold hands and help one another.
Absolutely.
There was some earlier over the summer, Somali community members saying that the food aid, as you exactly said, might not be enough. And instead, they want the United Nations to empower people by encouraging farming and self-dependent. Is there any efforts anybody doing as far as you know?
I mean, food security, it's an issue that is not only towards this drought, but it's a general problem with Africa. I mean, I don't want to get into the political, people stand on one. WFP is a double-edged sword. They will give you food, but is it really empowering the farmer? We're not talking about the drought. We're talking about in general if the country was safe and people could farm. If a farmer can farm and sweat and could get his crops to the market and the public can see free food, is that really helping or is that really hurting the farmer and the local thing? So those are the kind of things that you're actually mentioning. So I don't want to get into the politics of what happens and is the World Food Program doing a great job or not. They are doing a great job as they stand right now. When I was at Dadaab, they were doing a good job. They were feeding hundreds of thousands of people, and I've seen with my own eyes line up. Sure, it's a low-calorie, corn that is or maize that is shipped from Nebraska all the way to East Africa. Sure, it's not fresh. Sure, but at least they're doing what they can and they're feeding the folks out there. So you can look at it in either way, but at this point, they are delivering food, and I've seen it in my own eyes. So.
One concern here is that I know there's a difference of opinions of this, but many Somalis believe, especially the educated Somalis, believe that it's not the best interest of the country to let these thousands of people cross to Kenya every day. It's basically Somalia is losing its population to Kenya. And unfortunately, I listened to the news that when you visit those camps, people say, I will never go back. Because, as I said earlier, they were suffering for the last 20 years, and they don't see the end in sight. So one thing that I think might help the situation is to feed these people somewhere inside Somalia instead of letting them cross the border to Kenya.
Oh.
And by the way, if you do that, you are indirectly helping the economy, local economy, because these aid organizations are spending money, and that money is better to be spent inside Somalia than inside Kenya. So many people think that this so-called, refugees influx going to Kenya is not actually a good way to go. It's not helping the situation. It's making and also once they get to Kenya camps, that also will create a culture of a dependency. But if they are inside Somalia, they are considered IDPs. They will not be fed for forever. So everybody will try to reestablish their lives and go back to their locality, start farming again, and start doing things, and maybe micro, loans or something to help these people to reestablish their lives might also help. So that's a concern for us.
Indeed, and that was the follow-up answer question that I was going to ask. Now, Kulthum, you're from Kenya. Is that the sentiment in Kenya?
No, really, I'm surprised. First of all, these refugees that are flocking into the Kenyan, the refugee camps, have no option. They're running for their own lives. And if the security in the regions where they're running from would have been good, then I guess the aid agencies would have gone to where they are, provide whatever help they need to provide to them at their area. And to also mention the Dadaab refugee camp, I had the opportunity of working there with Care International, which is doing a great job of helping, in addition to other organizations that are also doing a great job there. These camps were temporarily built to accommodate not over 990,000. It was just a temporary camps, but it ended up, having to accommodate more refugees because they're running for their lives, and these are people that most of them come into the camps so in dire need of food. Unfortunately, majority of them are women and children. Some of the kids are malnourished. Some of them coming with different, health issues. And the agencies on the ground, what they do is provide whatever help they can in terms of providing medical assistance, medical services, at the same time food. So I guess it all comes down to the security on the ground in the regions where these refugees are running from. Because if the security was there, it would have been much easier. Because what is happening at the moment is there's another camp that has recently been opened. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but because of the refugee influx and the resources that have been, the resources that were originally supposed to provide for at least 90 refugees is now trying to provide for over 500,000. So it's definitely straining the resources. A lot of burden for the refugees that have already been there because they have to share some of their food, aid and all that, food rations, at the same time as the aid on the ground, because all these refugees coming in, they need help. They have to provide help to them and services. So there's a lot of pressure both on the refugees, on the host communities in Dadaab, the Kenyan Somalis that live there. So there's pressure on the host community, at the same time on the refugee population, at the same time the organization on the ground. So it's no win situation, but that's the only option that we got at the moment.
I would say a minute. I don't think the people from the border states have any choice because walking all the way to Mogadishu is not an option for them. If you are from Gedo or Lower Chuba, but I'm hearing people are coming from all over Somalia. Even I'm hearing that in northern Somalia, there are poor IDPs for a long time. And these are packing up and leaving to Dadaab because that's the only place that they know there's a medical services as well as the feeding for 3 times a day. So it would have been better if they open camps in every region, at least the regions that's not controlled by Al-Shabaab, so they can feed these people inside Somalia.
Okay, so thank you so much. And unfortunately, the time has come for us to end the first half, but we will definitely invite you back and make sure that we continue this conversation. And so we ask you to join us for the second half of Global Columbus, where we'll continue this conversation on the famine in the Horn of Africa.
Indeed. Also, please make sure that you join us on the CRC website.